I wouldn't pay too much attention to that recruiter of the century stuff. Century's only 8 years old. I asked Father what he wanted me. The last time I did this, by the way, with someone else, I left my notes on the podium like this, and the guy finished introducing me, and he scooped up his notes and my notes and took off. It was called Talk About Winging It 101. But Father suggested, when I said, what do you think I ought to talk about, Father? He said, well, for starters, why don't you tell them a little about the phases of your life? So I thought about it, and I have them now separated, so I have the whole thing figured out, and it's very simple. It starts with who is Gerry Roche? Second was get me Gerry Roche. The third is get me another Gerry Roche. The fourth is get me a younger Gerry Roche. The fifth, which I'm in the process of right now, is who is Gerry Roche? Father also suggested that in view of the timing and everything else that I use an economy of words. I would have guessed that he was tipped off to know that I am also, and Jim didn't mention this, but I'm very proud that I am the chairman of a support group that is for those who talk too much. And the support group is called On and On and On. And I have to tell you, that reminds me of a story. Murphy died, and his dedicated wife, Bridget, dutifully went down to the local newspaper to put the required obituary in the paper, and ran into the obituary editor and told him that Murphy died, and we wanted to put in the paper his obituary. And he said, that's fine, we'll put anything in you want. And he said, there's only one problem. It's $5 a word. And she said, oh my God, saints preserve us, $5 a word. All right, well, everybody knew me, knew him, everybody knew Murphy. Just put in, Murphy died. And he said, no, 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 no. It's $5 a word, 5-word minimum. Oh, saints preserve us, $5 a word. About $25. I have to think about it, but, oh, I have it. Put in, Murphy died, Volkswagen for sale. Why this title? Good question, and I would, there's a long version and a short version, but I'll give you the shorter one and try to skin it down a little bit. It's absolutely true. When Jim mentioned my background, and the owner-founder of our firm, Gerard Heidrick, God rest his soul, 6'6", lean, hardy Dutchman who only wanted one thing in his life. Simple man, only one thing, his own way. That's worth a laugh. It's worth a tear too at times, I have to say. But when he made me the CEO, and I tried to take over, and I would try to conduct the executive committee meetings, he would undercut me without even thinking about it. I have to say, one of the lessons I learned is that owner-founders are the toughest people to work for, so just in general. But Gardner Heidrick was, and you get a stiff-minded Dutchman like Gard, and think about that. So I'd be conducting executive office, executive committee meetings. He would think nothing of undercutting me and saying, Roche, incidentally, I thought for sure he was trying to change my name to, first name would be Dammit, because everything he said to me was, damn it, Roche, why are you doing that? So I said to him, Gard, you're undercutting me and you just can't do that. I mean, this is the room has people that are reporting to me in it, and you're weakening my position, and Governance 101 says you can't do that. He said, well, all right, I'll tell you what I'll do. I won't do that anymore. But when I say I feel strongly about something, you'll know damn well I want it done. So that has become the mantra of Heidrick and Struggles. Anytime they hear the corner office say, I feel strongly about this, they know that it has weight and meaning, and I would kind of use that as my title. Now, having said that, again, Father, when we were talking about it, he said, well, we'd like you to talk about several things, but integrating the character, faith, and leadership mantra in it would be good. But Roche, people are interested in what it takes to get to the top and what the secrets of success are. And I'm saying, hey, folks, everybody, just go into any bookstore, particularly at airports where they sell business books like crazy. I mean, the business books are just so filled up there with stuff on how to get to the top and how to, how to do this and how to do that as we speak. So help me. As we speak, Larry Bossidy is writing another book on leadership. Russ Palmer, the dean of Wharton, is writing one, has written one. Ram Charan is doing another one, who has written more than anybody else on this. Jeff Sonnenfeld up at Yale is writing one. Steve Miller, the chairman of Delphi, is writing one. And there's one that I'm particular. A.J. Lafley, the chairman of P&G. Where does he get off having the time to write a book? But okay, A.J. But it's got to be good because he's a good guy. But I'm saying, boy, there is no dearth of stuff on opinions on how to get to the top and what it takes to succeed. So what I'd like to use as kind of a theme here a little bit is, hey, what works for me? What are the, incidentally, I forgot to mention another thing that's coming out, and boy, when it comes, it's worth it. The title of it is going to be In the Mind of Drucker, Peter Drucker. Somebody Peter is in his 90s and was very active and died just a few years ago, and he is probably the most prolific and greatest business writer ever. And I had the pleasure, distinct honor, thank God, but when I was getting my MBA at night down at NYU, Peter Drucker was conducting the class on foreign and international management. What an honor, what a. Now, you have to get a kid who came out of parochial school, who went to a Jesuit school, who then went in the Navy for 4 years and ran things by the book, Jim, as you know so well. You don't have too much. You know the answers to questions when you're on the bridge of a ship, I'll tell you, or you shouldn't be there. But I went in there with that background. It was at night school, and they ran the sessions from 7 to 9. And it was always the case study. Hey, folks, I know you all know what the case study is. I even know what the case study is today. I didn't know then. I didn't know that the case study was a sophisticated Harvard Business School and Wharton and Stanford type of thing to say, hey, there are different ways to approach problems. And we want to throw out this challenge to you and see how you develop and then see how you develop. And what you get graded on is your technique to get. And I invariably come 5 to 9 with having a half a dozen different decisions on how to solve a problem. Old Roche would put his hand in the air and say, well, hey, professor, what's the right answer to that question? And finally, about 3 or 4 times he put up with that. And this is true, so help me God. And frankly, it was transformational and educational for me, this comment. He said, Roche, you are either an engineer or the victim of a Jesuit education. But what I'd like to get at here is saying, hey, if you want to know leadership, taking the theme of Lumen and character, faith, and leadership and integrating them into your life is not bad to begin with. I mean, as a starter, I would suggest that. And everything I've heard about it, they're on the right track. We're on the right track, I hope, if I could be integrated into the organization. And you could say, hey, that's unarguable, but it's very general, Roche. Can you get specific? Specifically, what are you talking about? And I'm saying, hey, one suit doesn't fit everybody. What I'm about to say, I would like to offer to you, other than my theme of, I feel strongly about this, my other theme would be, this works for me. And what works for me may not necessarily work for you, but I want to give you some of the highlights of what has developed me to be where I am and do what I do. I am not suggesting that you write it all down and then go out tomorrow and try to do it. Incidentally, I have one of my all-time favorite stories, very, very true, and not a big joke, but boy, does that have application. I was sitting one time, just a couple months ago, with this guy, Ram Sharam, again, one of the most prolific writers, and probably the most successful business consultant in the world. And he's a loner. He doesn't have squads and gangs of people. He is at the elbow of CEOs around the world, including the Jeff Imlets and our friend at P&G and Alain Belda. He does nothing but sit and schmooze. He's kind of, in my book, if you saw Peter Sellers and Being There, he's kind of whatever that guy's name was, Chancey Gardner, yeah. You know, he gives these, and anyhow, I'm sitting with him, and I said, hey, what do you think of Joe Blow? And he fired right back at me without even batting an eyelash. He said, for what? And I said, what do you mean, for what? And he said, well, is Derek Jeter a good ball player? And I said, of course. And he said, he is to be the shortstop of the New York Yankees, but how would he be as the quarterback for the New York Giants? The right person in the right job, and what you choose as things that fit you, I would say, is number one thing to learn. Hey, read all those books you want to, listen to all the Roches in the world that you want to, but you got to have it. It has to be adaptable and applicable by you. And I would include saying, hey, the core values of Lumen, same thing. You're gonna take all of those things that Jim just mentioned. I was thinking it was my wife defining herself when he was saying all these things. But anyhow, what I want to say is what works for me. And I got to tell you, right at the top, lead an integrated life. Most all the successful people I know eat, sleep, live their job. There's a great line, do what you enjoy and you'll never work another day in your life. The integrated life is fundamental to what works for me. And I'd say to go to church or mass or synagogue or whatever service you do on a Sunday or a weekend and pretend that discharges your moral performance, and then go out and put your armor on to go out and be Joe Shark in the marketplace, that's totally wrong. Integrating your morality, integrating your core values into everything you do in your life is where it's at. And I feel strongly about that, and that works for me. This is hard for me to, I've never talked about this subject before, and I was talking with Father over there a little bit, but I got to tell you, if you want to know what works for me and what I feel strongly about, this is part of Roche's. I can't dignify it by calling it a prayer because I haven't gotten it approved by the Vatican yet, Father, but I'm working on it. But it is a fundamental regimen, it's a fundamental program, a plan, a procedure. Father, you had a good word? Routine, a good routine. I start every day, every single day, with some variation with this prayer. And this prayer is no more than a minute. I generally do it either on the train coming in or on the elevator going up to my job where it's nice and quiet and I have a moment to reflect, and I lay this prayer on the boss. And it goes like this. And incidentally, it's a derivation of what I learned in 3rd grade from the good nuns, and it was then called the morning offering. And if any of you have heard it, God bless you, that's it. But here's a variation that I find that I can articulate. Dear God, I offer you all my prayers, works, and sufferings of this day in reparation for all my sins, for the intention of all the people in the world, for world peace, and especially slug in what intention you want for that day. Like, hey, let me have a decent talk with these Lumen folks today, or take care of my uncle who's going to the hospital for cancer, Or even if you want, even make sure the Red Sox win tonight. Whatever you want to slug in, whatever special, specific thing. But think of this. What you're doing is making every single action of your day, all my prayers, works, and sufferings of the day, I offer to you. And then you go into your job, and you got the big guy helping you, not helping you, but being with you in everything you do. You're offering your prayer. Your presentations become a prayer. Your phone calls become a prayer. Your talk, this is a prayer for me right here, right now. I'm offering this up to Almighty God. How can I? Hey, listen, if you don't like what I'm saying, take it up with him, because I'm not in charge of this. But your whole day becomes a prayer, and a whole day integrated into your life. I would strongly recommend it and say to you, hey, give it a try. What do you got to lose? If you can get a better deal than that, having your entire day, every prayer, work, and suffering in your day be a prayer, if you can get a better deal than that, I think you ought to take it. In the meantime, try it. And this works for me. Good Lord, how many of you heard Steve Covey the last time that you did, Steve Covey Jr., on his talk on trust? Oh my God. I'll just say this. He made a point that was awesome, and that is, trust is not some pietistic platitude that is good for Sundays and that stuff. Trust is fundamental to good profits. It's profitable. It works. And I'm saying, hey, I know a situation. I can tell you, I was brought in very recently to replace a CEO, and as usual, I try to sit with the new decision makers and say, okay, why did this guy screw up, and what are we looking for, and so forth and so on. And this was incidentally a multi-business, a billion-dollar business that you all know, and you know the person they're talking about, and I don't want to go into it. I have lawyers all over me as it is. But the thing they started saying was, and they were very reluctant to open up to me and tell me the story. You know, why did Sam fail? That's what I was after. And the only way we can know to do the right thing is to know what happened that was the wrong thing and move it up from there. And they went through a litany of, he was bright, enthusiastic, creative, hardworking, charismatic, personable, innovative. All notes from, I took these from my notes of the meeting. Innovative, attractive. He only has one problem. We can't trust him. If you don't have trust, if you don't have people around you who you can trust, would you drive a car with the brakes that only work once in a while? And I'm telling you, if you don't have trust, nothing else counts. You can talk all about the wisdom, the analytical skill, blah, 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 blah. Forget it. I would say I feel strongly about that, and I don't have to embellish on that anymore. Other things that I find to be helpful for me, things that I like, things that, what's my phrase again? Things that work for me. Oh, forgive the arrogance of this, but forget about me on this. Communicating skills. The very definition of management is getting work through others. How can you get work through others if you can't communicate with them? How can you recruit, train, motivate, compensate? How can you do anything with anybody unless you can communicate with them? Is it any coincidence that Obama's, I think, his major attribute is his incredibly good communicating skills and his oratory? Is it any coincidence that the three major leaders of the Second World War, Adolf Hitler, FDR, and Winston Churchill, were all tremendous communicators? I'm saying communicators control the world, and if you can't communicate, you can't manage. And I feel strongly about that, unless you didn't pick that up. The next thing, and I think these overlap, and I have endless stories I can tell you about. I'll tell you one of them that I sat in on a meeting where they were introducing a brand new CEO that I had just put in this massive company. and they had a meeting of all the division heads that were in there, bragging about how they blew right through the ceilings of their forecast. 30%, 40%, 45% of forecast. This hurts me because this is my placement. And this is his first meeting. And the very first thing he said at his very first meeting of this enormously famous and relatively successful company, trying to succeed an owner-founder, I might add, and please don't anybody try to connect the dots. But the first thing this guy said when he got up was not welcome, wow, what a great team, gee, I'm so happy to be here. The first thing he said was, wow, seems like you guys need to sharpen up your forecasting tools. How do you think that went over? Or may I add, and my dear friend Bob Nardelli, who I put into Home Depot, and who was Jack's number 2 choice at GE, and you can take that for gospel, and Nardelli and McNerney were both, but anyhow, trust me, if you're within Jack's 2 or 3 choices, you're in pretty elegant ground. Nardelli goes down to Home Depot, with Ken Langones being the chairman of the search committee. But Nardelli goes down there, and one of the first things he does is take an interview with Fortune magazine, and I'm sure most of you read it. And the first thing Nardelli says is, I should have had the GE job. Did you guys read that? How did he make his 400,000 associates at Home Depot? How did he make them feel when he did that? Dumb thing. Bob, you're smart in it. Bob, then a year ago, and I think this did him in, and I'm proud of him. Incidentally, I put him into Chrysler as the new CEO, and he's doing fine. Maybe he's learned from it, but if you're going to ask me later any mistakes I ever made, one of them would have been putting Nardelli into Home Depot. But and think of this, what he pulled. When he was in tight water, and this was just a year and a half ago or so, he had a board meeting. He got plastered in the previous board meeting. They just took him apart because he missed his guidance. He goes into the next board meeting. He doesn't take any Q&A, and he doesn't bring any board members with him. How do you think Nell Minow felt about that? How do you think the shareholders felt about that? The next thing you know, he's out of there. Now, I'm saying, hey, Bob, I love you. You're a great guy. You're a great manager. You've got GE and what's that? Something Sigma 6 tattooed on your tail. Hey, Bob, you may be a great guy. You could use some sensitivity training. And I'm saying sensitivity, maybe it connects with the same thing as communications, but boy, I feel strongly about that, and I feel strongly about this. Probably one of the greatest business books ever written is Peters and Waterman's Search for Excellence, probably 20 years ago. Peters and Waterman were 2 McKinsey guys, 2 left brain types, and my son is a McKinsey type, so I know of what I speak. And that's everything has to be provable, everything ought to be quantifiable, everything is rational, and the soft stuff gets put on the second tier. Peters and Waterman decided to write a book, and the theme of the book was, what are the common denominators that make a company great? They studied the top 50 companies at that time. Here's the last paragraph of that book, and I recommend that book very strongly, along with, anyhow, the Peters and Waterman Search for Excellence and Drucker's Management by Objectives. 2, if you haven't read those, go back to school and read them. I mean, they are Bibles. Peters and Waterman, the last paragraph in that book says, quote, we went in looking for programs, practices, and procedures, and we came out finding pride, perseverance, and passion. Pride, perseverance, and passion. Do they teach that at business school? Somebody asked me, where do you go to learn that? And I said, I don't know, but I think it begins with potty training. And I'm serious. But if, you want to know my answer to what works for me and something I feel strongly about, pride, perseverance, and passion. Programs, practices, procedures, good luck on those. Anyhow. This is also tough for me to talk about, and I must say, you may be able to tell I give a talk or two here or there. I've never discussed this. But if you want to know what works for me and how I got here or what I feel strongly about, nothing goes beyond this. And it is the transformational value of suffering. Nobody likes to hear this. This is not a popular thing. Hey, the only way you can get somewhere is by suffering, right? Hey, let's follow that guy. Yo. Hey, the big guy said, didn't he? Didn't the big guy say he was giving a talk once to his Pharisees or whoever they were, and one guy says, how do we get to eternal life? And Christ said, keep the commandments. And the wise guy in the back says, I'm already keeping the commandments. And Christ says, oh, big deal. You want to be perfect, huh? Would you be perfect? Pick up your cross and follow me. Two instances, two things. This is hard for me, but let's, hey, I could use you. Long time ago, I was chairman of a committee at the University of Scranton at the time as a student to bring in a speaker for communion breakfasts. And we had, believe it or not, I was able to line up Fulton Sheen, who at that time was bigger than Willie Nelson is today. He went nose to nose with Milton Berle, and he was one of the most dynamic speakers ever. And we had him in Scranton, Pennsylvania, as our communion. Wow. Hey, Roche, way to go. We had the Hotel Casey jammed. We had the papers. We had everything. The night before, we get a call from Fulton Sheen. He says, hey, I'm not feeling well, and I got a big deal. Blah, blah, blah. I can't make it, but don't worry, Roche. I got another guy coming who is as good as or better than, yeah, as good as Fulton Sheen, yeah. Anyhow, so this squatty little guy comes in, Jebby from Lemoyne, Father Gruen, I can still remember his name. And folks, that talk that he gave that day has lasted with me every day of my life. And I'll try to get through it and say, what he did was he came up to the podium, rolled his sleeves up and said, so you're feeling sorry for yourself, huh? So you were expecting Fulton J. Sheen, and here's what you get, huh? Let me tell you a story of somebody's life. Oh, he prefaced it by saying, so you don't like this. It seems like you guys out there don't know how to handle suffering too much, huh? Let me tell you a story of somebody's life. And never in my life have I heard anybody go through the 7 sorrows of Mary like he did. How would you like to be pregnant and your husband doesn't even know what happened, yet this was the woman whom God loved most? How would you like to have to deliver that baby? It's good for Christmas cards and the like, but how would you like to have that baby and you carrying it in the middle of the winter in a stall with straw, with animals running around, yet this was the woman whom God loved most? How would you like to? And then he goes through the life of Mary, and he comes to the conclusion, and he winds up saying, talking about the passion, how would you like to have your son on a cross, blood dripping down, spears being thrown at him, jeering crowds, and you totally without resources and totally without a plan of action or anything? So how would you like that? Yet this is the woman whom God loved most. And you complain? I'll just leave it at that if I'm going to start going too much to water here. But one last thing on that point, and then I'll... Incidentally, I don't think it's any coincidence that the 12 apostles were all martyred one way or the other, including Judas's death, whatever way that was. But the 12 martyrs, were martyred. The 12 apostles were martyred. Coincidence? Huh? Hey, how do you think he felt about them? And look what happened to them. And you people complain because you're asked to undergo some difficulties? Welcome to the club. Yeah, I've never said this in public before either, but my son-in-law was killed in 9/11, leaving children, 2, 4, and 6. Worst thing that ever happened to me in my life. But I can say this: to say it was transformational is an understatement. To say this may seem arrogant to you, but as far as I'm concerned, it's God's honest truth. I am a better man because of that. Figure that out. I'm broader, deeper, better understanding, more tolerant of people, more in tune with the cross than I was. And I feel strongly about that. I'm not suggesting you go out and apply for any of that, but it isn't, I'm not pushing politics either, but John McCain was asked the other day how he felt about being locked up for 5.5 years. And he said, well, it was the worst thing in my life that ever happened to me, and I wouldn't do it again for $1 million, but I wouldn't give it up for $1 million. Figure that contradiction out. I think the greatest line in the Bible for me is, whatsoever you do unto the least of mine, you do unto me. He didn't say, you do too similar to me, you do like me. He said, whatever you do to the least of mine, you do unto me. And if you folks are out there trying to find God, I say the concept of the mystical body is not pasty theology, it's real. And I say, if you're looking for God, look next to you. Look across the desk from you. Look across the table tonight. We are as close to God as we are to the hearts and souls of our fellow man. And I feel strongly about that. And lastly, I'm winding down, folks. I don't know how the timing is, but I feel strongly about this, and this works for me. Part of this is going to work for you whether you want it to or not, and that is, we all know the 3 divine virtues: faith, love, and charity/love. When you die, and you're going to die, most of you are on the back 9. I can see the clubhouse. When you die, faith becomes inoperative. That which you believed in, see, boy, a very deep theologian once said, reality isn't here in this life. Reality is there. The mystery is here. Try to figure out what's going on. It's a mystery. When you face God Almighty, as you will run into ultimate reality, like it or not. There's nothing to have faith in at that time. You're facing reality. What are you going to believe in after that? Faith, hope. When you die, you don't have any. Hope is gone because what you've hoped for is there. Fortunately, if you make it, and if it isn't, where you're going, there's no hope there either. Even in purgatory, they can't help them. The theory of purgatory is they can't help themselves in purgatory. They depend on 2 things. One is prayers from people like us, or secondly, doing time. That's the only way they get from purgatory out. But they can't have faith in anything. They can't have hope in anything. It is. Now, the last thing there is, the only thing that lasts is what? All that lasts is love. And if you don't love, and if you're not wallowing in love and seeking it every day and recognize the soul in others, when the long-range view is realized, I wish you luck, but when you're home, when you're really home, you will live in love eternal, love ineffable, love with God Almighty. And I feel strongly about that. And I look forward to seeing you there.